The topic of this webinar is AI chatbots for libraries and institutions. What you see here in the beginning, by the way, is an image that couldn't be created anymore. It's the AI talking to a librarian in the style of Zaha Hadid. So in the early days of AI, let's say 6 months ago, this was an image that was possible because I asked DALL-E from OpenAI to create that particular image. Today, it's not possible anymore because of data protection policies that OpenAI implemented. It just serves as an example of how quickly the development goes and of how quickly we have to adapt to the development. I just refuse to make a new presentation because of this, but when we work with the technology, we have to adapt constantly. So already one of the challenges of the bot at the beginning. When we published this webinar, we were quite surprised by the responses that we received. So in red, all the countries that have registered. On the left with UNESCO, World Bank, and United Nations, also some of the institutions that have registered. Also, by the way, courts, national libraries from pretty much everywhere in the world. So we assume that there's a great interest in this topic. And of course, we are fascinated by this topic and we want to share our experiences. But already here, and I will repeat myself later, I also would like to send out an invitation to everybody, talk to us about it. We're happy to share our experiences. We're very open about our experiences. But we would also like to receive experiences because the development moves so quickly, the experiences gather so quickly that I think it helps everybody to be open about it. So we're open to help. We're open to provide experience. And please contact us if you have questions, if you want to share anything, or if you want to just try. All right, so what awaits you? We tell a little bit about who we are. So we, the company who built the bot together with the libraries of Berlin. Moritz, as a representative of the libraries of Berlin, will tell you why they actually chose to do that with us. We'll compare a little bit where the bot stands in the strategy of libraries and others. This is the comparison between search and conversation, and we explain, of course, how it works. Then I'll hand over to Moritz, who will show you how it works briefly on the website. Briefly because it's open, so every participant of this webinar, of course, can try for him or herself. Which is, by the way, the best thing you learn about AI is just to do it. In the end, we'll in the third part of the webinar, we'll talk a little bit about library-specific problems, so metadata, what the metrics for a conversation are, how to prompt, of course, about the costs and about the strategy in the future. So this is it, and I hope we're entertaining enough, but it's early. I hope the coffee still works. And the last webinar was in the evening, so it was not as much energy as we have on the spot today. So I am Tilman Scheer. I was a lawyer. I studied art history. I love being a lecturer and being present on panels. But with all of that, I still work in IT since 2004. I don't know how it happened, but it happened, and it still is fun. I am the CEO of AFA and Ask. What that is, well, Ask is what we're having this webinar about. It's the bot. And AFA is something that I'll show you later. Actually, you can talk to me in all the following languages. Sometimes I'll confuse them, like especially Italian and French. But usually I understand everything. I can answer. And my answers hopefully make sense. So that's me. Don't hesitate to contact me if there's anything related to the webinar. Let me know. So, and this is Moritz, who's the other one here, from the libraries of Berlin. He's the head of digital, so all the digital projects run across his table and his email inbox. At the VÖBB Service Zentrum Berlin, which is basically the union of all the libraries in Berlin. I think it's around 80 libraries, right? But more.
80 branches.
with 430,000 users, library card holders. So it's not a small thing. He's an obsessive meta prompter. Another lesson already in this webinar. If you want a bot that is specific for your institution, it's very good for us to have a counterpart in the institution, because of course the conversations in the bot should match closely to the needs of the institution, and for that somebody in the institution needs the curiosity and the motivation to work with us to customize the bot to your needs. Moritz is also very open and can be spoken to in English and in French, and is happy to respond to any questions, comments.
And in German.
And of course, anger if it doesn't work. But that you can also, you better leave with me. All right, so chatbots for libraries. Moritz, I hand over to you because you tell me when we came to you with the crazy idea of doing the bot, why you actually did it.
Yeah. Hello from me also. Why we did it. There's a number of reasons which you can see here, and I'm gonna explain them briefly. One is that we can see since the start of ChatGPT and then the start of Bing AI and the other search-related AI tools from Google, Microsoft, those are the main ones, that search might be about to change again in a way in which it hasn't changed for 20 years. And we, as libraries, we offer search engines. Our websites, they're basically search engines. And we think that the openness of the APIs, for example, of OpenAI, is a chance to be at the front of this time, and try new things out, and not just be steamrolled by changing expectations that then lead to fewer user engagement on our sites. The hope is that a system like this will help users find items that traditional search will not find for them. And that's not from the perspective of a librarian who can use the extended search functions, but from the perspective of a user that normally just puts 3 words in the search box and clicks enter. We think that the fuzziness that the AI chatbot can deal with might be a good thing for that. The next is that conversation might be easier for users to use because it allows the chatbot, the system, the AI system, to return questions to the user so as to specify the request and maybe do that again, and then send the request to the search function. Tilman is going to show you how that works, so that there's it takes more time, but the time gives the user precision in some cases. So there's the fuzziness, and then there's the conversation, which can make things more precise. There's also some relief for example, the hours where there's no library personnel, just guards in our libraries, let's say on Sundays, for example, or in the evenings. In Berlin, that's a use case in the public libraries. One thing that's really great, one of the great things about the chatbot is that it speaks 90 languages. You can just ask it to speak with you in Farsi or in English or in French. And our website has 2 languages, German and English, the normal front end. And last and not least, it's something new. We hope that it can be fun. It can be a fun way to experience, to have a first contact maybe with the library for users, and also for staff, because it's something that in our case, we're the first one, at least in Germany, but we think maybe worldwide for a public library. And it's just fun we see that for our people in the libraries, staff, to be a part of that and to try it out and see what it does and then make it better. Those are the main reasons. Back to you, Tilman.
Yeah, I want to underline the language part because as mother-in-laws go, my mother-in-law never understood what I'm doing. Actually, she's of Persian origin, and so I showed her the bot, and she could communicate with the bot in Persian, so with Arabic writing. And since then, she's quite fascinated and convinced that, you know, what her son-in-law is actually up to. So helps intercultural understanding as well. All right. How did it all begin? So basically, we come from the film industry in the sense that we run video-on-demand platforms for also public libraries and also university libraries. So you see here VÖBB.watch. On the bottom right is the link to our library that we built for the Berlin libraries. You can see where the connection comes from. But this library, this video-on-demand service, it's very strong in, let's say, alternative art house content. So we have a lot of LGBTQ films, festival films, very strong in African films. And we do collaborate with institutions, human rights institutions. For example, on the top left, there's a film project, interview project of a human rights institution here in Berlin, where they interview migrants. The problem with all these the challenge with all these films is that they don't have a famous, or I mean, Charlie Chaplin you have probably seen before, but usually these films don't have famous actors. They don't have famous directors. They are strong on the topics they deal with. So when ChatGPT came out in November 2022, we saw this as a perfect a way of introducing the viewers of our video-on-demand platform to find actually films that might be of interest for them. That worked pretty well. And then we went to our best client, the Berlin libraries, and said, you know, don't you want that too? And for the reasons Moritz has just explained to you, they luckily said yes. And this is when the journey began. So the journey began in April last year. So one more remark, setting up a chatbot with ChatGPT through the ChatGPT API is easy. I think, programmer can do that within 2-3 days at max. To customize the spot to a specific data set of a library, to have the prompts right, to eliminate bugs that always happen, and to also do some expectation management with library staff and with users is the real task. So this has been quite a trip. We have made a lot of experiences that we share also in this webinar. But of course, as I said in the beginning, we will share in the future as well. Just ask us. This is how it looks now. So if you go to VÖBB, to the website of the VÖBB, on the bottom right, you see the bot. You can open it. You can chat with it. And hopefully find something that you can actually then borrow in the service. So where it stands, I'll come to that at the end, of course, in strategy, but we saw the bot also traditionally, because we come from the video-on-demand website, as an alternative to search. This is also what Moritz explained in the motivation. And so it provides another access to library collections, actually an access that is multilingual, an access that is let's say more suited for people who don't really know what they want. So I think I'll send this presentation around, of course, after the webinar. and I think I can summarize all these points into one thing. You can interact with the chatbot as you can with a human. My standard, almost stale joke is always AI is also human, is only human, and so you can use it interactively. You can narrow choices down, and you can actually just browse. So, for example, my favorite presentation of the bot is always "I'm bored," and so the bot can answer to that. You know, the bot can say, "Okay, that's sad. Can I entertain you with a comedy?" And these things, of course, are not possible with a search. With a search, you need to know what you're searching for. So for me, the bot is something like standing in front of a big bookshelf and browsing through it. Let yourself inspire by what is available, and then pick something that you are inspired with. So search doesn't inspire. You need to know the bot can inspire in the best of cases. For me, this is the bottom line of the difference between the two. How does it work? So this is a very high level explanation of how the bot works. Actually, every one of these terms on the right merits a separate webinar. And we'll send to you after the webinar a very little survey of 5 questions. And one part of the survey is there anything in this webinar that you want to see in webinar form from me in the future? And of course, we'll react to that. I'll assume you're a bit familiar with these terms when I explain this thing. But of course, as I said, if you want to have a more in-depth explanation of the terms and of the way it works, please contact us. So we start at the bottom with the metadata, because of course the bot needs to talk about something, and he talks about the metadata that we provide to him. One important information here is, so we don't train the large language model, the AI. We don't make fine-tuning. We provide all the metadata that is provided to us by the library to the bot as a part of the conversation. So when we get when they get the metadata, it is imported to our vector database. After it has been cleaned up and broken into snippets, snippets are basically short text forms that we can exchange with the bot using the ChatGPT API. What is happening in this GPT embed API in this vector database? So a vector is nothing else than a numerical representation of metadata, and this metadata can either be the metadata that we imported from a library, so the title of the book, the writer, the filmmaker, the musician, and the summary of things. And all of this is turned into basically a series of numbers. These numbers are large, and these large numbers, called vectors, are stored in the vector database. There they stay. The vector database is hosted by us. It's in Europe and Germany, and it follows the laws of German data protection, and awaits the user question. And now we turn to the conversations above. So the user asks a question to the bot. So it types into the bot. The bot sends this question also to the GPT API. Again, this GPT API turns it into a number. And then this number is also sent to our vector database and is compared to the vectors that we already have from the metadata inside this database. And the great thing about these vectors is that they can not only match words like a traditional search does, but they also can match context and grammar, and similarities. So and this is so depending on the request, the vector database feeds the most similar results back to ChatGPT. So this is the arrow that goes up, and GPT turns this search results from the vector database into a natural language conversation, and returns this natural language conversation back to the bot, who again returns it to the user. And this circle sort of, so user asks a question, turned into a vector. Vector is sent to our vector database compared to the existing vectors of the metadata. Results are sent to ChatGPT to turn into natural language. The ChatGPT sends it to our bot and again talks to the user. It's kind of a circle that runs every time a new question is asked. So it goes around and around and around. The most important, or one of the important infos for you here is that every conversations, so to speak, with ChatGPT costs money. Its cost is so-called tokens. So the more context you deliver, so the more search results you deliver to the chatbot to engage into the conversation, also the more question and answer pairs you allow in a conversation, creates cost. So one of the most common questions is why, for the moment, we limit the conversation in the bot to 4 question and answer pairs is exactly that. A conversation costs money. We have to make experiences, how long these conversations are, what is asked. Based on that experience, we can extend this conversation, but it's always easier to extend something, a service, than to narrow it down. So we think that we'll allow longer conversations in the future, but for the moment we just observe how it turns into cost. So this is a very brief intro into how this works. As I said, I can talk to this for about 2 hours, but we don't have that time. And also it's about the experience of the libraries, so I'll continue here. The live demo. I'll just hand over to Moritz. Moritz, I'll stop sharing my screen, and you can use your screen to show how it works on VÖBB. Okay?
Yes, I will do that. Okay, you should see the web page of our library system now. VÖBB.de, you can try it there yourself. You can do that now. You can do it later. You can then give feedback. This is our OPAC program developed by Aztec, so an ARDIS OPAC, where the bot is simply behind this little chat button. It opens as an overlay, but it's the same window. And I already switched to English, which I can just do by asking him, the bot. And I have 2 test questions. It is as of now, and that's what it says, it's a recommendation tool. And that means it doesn't give you the same answer every time. That can make it inspiring. You ask the same question for the same kind of thing, and you might get different answers, but it's a little unusual, and we're going to see how expectations of users fit with that. I'm going to try this because this gave me 3 interesting titles, and we're going to see if they're the same as the last time. So the question is, show me a recent Kreuzberg crime novel. And yeah, it's almost the same, but it's not exactly the same. And now I get 3 crime novels. It's German novels, and I guess that that's because we mostly have German crime novels that are set in Kreuzberg. I can then choose one and just click on it and then use it, borrow it. I can, and this is important, very important for us, I can give feedback and tell us, the user can tell us if that's a good result, a bad result, what they expected, what they asked. And if I click here, in the title and can order here, I'm going to start a new conversation with a much more fuzzy question. That is, I think, something that users will have a very hard time asking the our normal search tool. And it's this. I'm looking for a novel that is set on the beach and easy to read for my vacation. We're going to see what it finds. I think these are pretty suitable titles, because Sommerglück zum Frühstück means something like summer for breakfast, or summer luck, summer happiness for breakfast. That sounds easy to read and perfect for a beach vacation. And the other ones too. I think these are two examples where the bot can really show its strength. I'm going to stop my screen sharing now. And you can just try, and if you try, please give us feedback. That's very important and interesting to us, because we can then see what we can do about negative feedback or reinforce positive things. Thank you.
All right. So, 1 second. Never found out how that works. So we already got feedback. So a participant tried in Arabic and asked it to talk in Arabic, and then it switched back to German in the answer. It would be interesting to see whether the same happens on mobile, because actually in mobile for my mother-in-law, it worked, it stayed in the language. So these are the experiences actually that we have to make. Of course, for Berlin, we have the prompt that the standard language is German. So to have a more intelligent prompt that stays in the language of the chosen language is something that actually we're actively working on. All right, so use of chatbots and libraries. I'll talk about the most important thing first, metadata. So the metadata that we can use, that we wrote an importer for, is Mark 21 XML. So these are standard formats that we can use to feed the bot with. So basically, when we began the bot, Moritz just sent us the metadata of the Berlin libraries. Well, a test set of the metadata of the Berlin libraries. It's 4 million items, so that was a bit too big, but a test set in Mark XML 21, we imported it with our importer. Importing meaning it's structured data. AI can do nothing with structured data, so you need to turn it into natural language. So instead of genre thriller, in our import, we say the genre of this book is a thriller, and then the AI can work with it. If we work with a library management system, with now in the case of the Berlin libraries, we do. We already get natural language out of the library system that we import and then use. For us, it doesn't matter. We take everything and turn it into snippets that then are fed to the as you remember, to the API that turns it into vectors and then is stored in the vector database. An interesting thing for us and that we're exploring right now is what about third-party data, especially open access data that we could use to enrich the data that we receive by the libraries, because as you all know probably, is that the metadata that libraries have about the items that they have in their collection is rather, let's say, rather scarce, rather short sometimes. So this could be helped with collaboration with other libraries to amass metadata, but also to use third-party services to automatically enrich the metadata that we have on certain items. Because these are the challenges. So not enough data, and too structured. And because, as I said, we need natural language. Another big topic with metadata, of course, is the ownership of data. So many times the data that you have about a certain item, about a book, about a music piece, comes from the publisher, and the publisher wants money to give it to make it available for AI. That is not so much the case when you just search summaries as we do for the Berlin libraries, but if we touch them, let's say, way more interesting problem in sense of metadata of talking with whole books. with an ebook. So basically, you ask an ebook a question. So you can ask an ebook, I don't know, on which page has Voldemort finally died? If you ask this kind of questions, then of course you have to talk and acquire the rights to do that with a publisher of Harry Potter. Of course, especially for universities, this is a huge issue. Luckily, many universities have collections of open access data and of the publication of their staff. So that is actually a very, very interesting development for the future. But ownership is something to be looked out for. Yeah, so the solutions I told you already, an importer for Mark 21 and other standardized format, experience, test, and curiosity. There's always surprises. Open access data in collaboration with licensors and other holders of metadata. And then hopefully, this is an AI-generated image. We can control the cacophony of words that for the moment it's still out there. Conversations with a bot. So this is a Hellenistic land surveyor. The problem with conversations, and that is a very practical problem in the collaboration with us and the libraries, what makes a good conversation? Because many times the conversation is quite, what is a good conversation is quite subjective. You know, it can be more, for what some people need the conversation to be more precise, others want it to be more creative. You can actually influence it in our backend, you know, lower the temperature, then it's more creative, but then it's, no, it's actually the other way around. So you can make it more creative or you can make it more precise. It's a trade-off. The more precise it is, the more the bot sounds like a machine. So basically the only really way to influence metrics and to define metrics is human feedback. So what we did, we made a long list of test questions. We ran the test questions through the bot. And if the result wasn't good enough for us, people, we had to prompt the bot in a different way. Also questions like what the result should be. What the result, Moritz showed you the result that basically there's a list of titles that you can choose from. ChatGPT, if you ask it, usually provides you with one answer and the answer that it considers to be the best answer. That's a strategy decision. You can provide 5 results, you can provide 1 result, you can provide already the part where you borrow the books, or you can be forwarded to the borrowing books. That's something to be discussed. So this is actually where the time is really spent. Precision via creativity, I told you already when I talked about the results. Big topic, especially in the European Union. We also collaborate with extra European Union libraries, and they don't really understand the topic in the European, or let's say, are skeptical why we are so skeptical about data protection. Data protection is a huge issue here in the European Union. Of course, we try to be as, we try to protect personal data. On the other hand, if you really protect the personal data, so you don't collect the personal data of the users, you cannot consider the borrowing history in the conversation, which is also a bummer. So a chatbot might suggest to you books that you have already read. Again, a trade-off between data protection and, let's say, the quality of the conversation. It's a trade-off, like so many things with AI. So because there are so many trade-offs, it's a very important thing to have expectation management. For me, it's always interesting that OpenAI itself, which is one of the highest, the most visible companies of the planet, with a huge user base of hundreds of millions of people, and they basically deliver their service claiming that don't trust our results, research whether our results are correct, which is interesting for a service that is so hugely popular. And I think the reason why they are so popular, even though they're not specific in their answers or their hallucinations, is that in their expectation management from the beginning, they said basically that AI is only human and can make mistakes. I saw an interview with Sam Altman, the head of OpenAI, who said basically, you know, when it fantasizes, when it imagines things, that's just a sign of artificial creativity, you know. So whatever you do, also and also to the users of the Berlin libraries, we have we have it's one of the difficult things to do is to do expectation management, because we got negative feedback, for example, because the AI bot wasn't able to tell you the children's program in one specific library next Sunday. And of course, for the moment, it cannot do that, because we focused on delivering informations about media items. So expectation management, big topic. Prompting. So here I'm handing over to Moritz again, who's the wizard of prompting for the Berlin libraries. And Moritz, tell us a little bit about your
I'm back now
experience
because
with the
I've been
prompting.
chatting. I've been chatting on the side because there's so many questions for us and for you. The prompt, sometimes people say meta prompt, sometimes you say prime prompt, and it seems to be very similar things. That's just the text where you tell the bot, where I tell the bot what it should do, what it is, how it can do it, and what it shouldn't do. And then some style information, and then you can add these little snippets of knowledge about VÖBB, because one thing we knew is that people would ask, how can I get a library card? And it can show you a link, and then you have the whole function there with an explanation, and people can just fill out the form and do that. So the first sentence of the prompt actually is, you are an AI recommendation assistant of the VÖBB. It should be of a VÖBB in English, I think, but in German he does the right thing then, as an addition to the classical search feature. And then I go on and on, tell them, this is what you can do and this is what you cannot do. You have no access to articles, e.g. from newspapers. That's basically to stop him from hallucinating information about newspaper articles, because it's going to do that if asked. With this, it's in 99% of the time, it's not going to do it. And then there's little snippets of instructions in there, like you saw it's 3 catalog entries that are recommended at most. And that's just something you tell the system, suggest up to 3 catalog entries. And then there's information about how to do it. There's a tool, a function called load embeddings, and it can use that. And then I tell it, if you don't find a match, do it again. And if then you don't find anything, excuse yourself and tell the user that this does not necessarily mean that there is nothing in the catalog, but there's no match in the, and they can use the normal search. And what he does now, that's new, is make a suggestion of how to use our classical search function, which gives the bot an out when it can't find anything in its own system. And that's really brittle stuff. It can happen that you change one word and something breaks or works in a different way as it did before. So that's a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of trying, testing, trying again, changing little stuff, and testing.
All right, yeah. And let's say the world of AI is full of surprises. I think we can both sing a song about that. So how can that be integrated? Just very briefly, it's very quick and easy. You see the arrow here to a link that we have on our website. There's a documentation. Provided that we get the metadata in a good format, our bot at least can be implemented into any website in half a day. If it's our bot as a standalone, it can be cost, and of course, it's flexible. It can pretty much take any data, give us some time if it's a more exotic data set, but usually it's just a very simple thing. So if you consider having your own bot, and if you want to have it quickly, check out whether you can implement it as described in the link given here in the presentation. talk to us and do it. Another way, which we did also, because of course, as we said, systematically, it's largely an alternative to search, and as that very at the core of library online services. And so we integrated it with the library management system of the VÖBB libraries. So there it has direct access to the borrowing system. We can actually link the data wiki with it. So actually we don't have to prompt it anymore. It's actually ongoing work. Sometimes it's interesting because you don't, if it becomes a module of an existing service, you don't have to call for tenders, which sometimes is a legal requirement. And as for the bot, of course, it's easier to access also data that changes regularly, because you're just we just automatically import the updates that are done inside the OPAC and inside the library management system. And then your bot becomes part of the library universe once this is done. And then, but of course, if you do it, the integration with LMS, it becomes really an integral part of your offer, but that takes more time. How much time, of course, depends largely on the library management system. We are rather quick there. How much does it cost? A question, of course, that interests most. So the cost structure is set up, which basically depends on how it is set up with us as a standalone, with the library management system. But in both cases, we need to clean the metadata, we need to hook up the interfaces, we need to engineer the prompts as Moritz described for your particular library. That is something where we cannot really tell you how much it is, because it depends very much on the metadata that you control and on the way it is included. In the simplest of ways, it's actually done in 3 days. Maintenance and support, this is the running cost, the running of the databases, for example, the vector database, the support. Actually, the main part of the maintenance is to keep up with the amazing speed of the development in AI. So you have a model every other day. You have to keep track of the costs, which continue falling. So from one day to another, OpenAI halves the cost for their system, for their LLMs. In the moment we run on GPT 3.5 for cost reasons. When the next price reduction comes, we will again test whether it makes sense to change to ChatGPT 4.40. So this is basically an ongoing process that we need to do in the background to be up to date. Because, I mean, one thing you have to remember, there are many people who use ChatGPT, so they know what to expect. And if you don't match the expectation of the people who also use ChatGPT, then you come into this, dark corner of being a second-grade service. And this is, of course, what we don't want. So this is behind maintenance. And then the tokens, these are pretty much the costs that we have to forward to OpenAI. I have a costs of one conversation in our current setup. So with the context that we deliver with the question and answer pairs is $0.006 for a conversation. With ChatGPT 3.5, with 4 question and answer pairs, with the context that we deliver. So this gives you an idea. So 250,000 conversations cost about $1,200 in the moment. Or 1,300 depending. But this, again, very volatile. The good thing is that the prices, because of the heavy competition in this area, go down quickly. And so, but still, you can limit the pair of Q&A. You can limit the size of context to keep a cost control. The most important thing is we provide statistics on that to monitor closely what you spend on tokens. So far, actually, we don't have, Moritz, I think I'm saying nothing secret here. We don't have much headaches with the cost control for tokens. So last slide, the future. Good quality metadata in natural language, of course, is the secret to everything. The better the metadata, the better the conversation, the happier the user. So this is what we constantly work on. What we also are doing now is developing the best way of having a conversation with full text, which especially for universities is a big topic. But of course, it's also fun to be able to talk with a book. But here, you really need to, it's another level of prompting, it's another level of cost, because of course the context that is exchanged with the AI is much, much larger. And of course, you have the issue of ownership of data. So we are testing with open access data, which is probably the way to go. I think in the future, anyway, all students, all pupils are already using ChatGPT, and there will be huge pressure coming from the users of services as to allow ChatGPT into their studies, into their schools, and into actually using libraries and ebooks. Content enrichment, we talked about that, especially for improving metadata. ChatGPT function calls. It's also related to the last bullet point. It would be great if actually we can merge search and conversation, so that actually the artificial intelligence itself decides whether it wants to launch a search because there was a very request for a very specific question, or whether it realizes I'm in a conversation and I stay in the conversation. So function calls, you can also call Google Map, you can call a calendar. So we can already call functions into the chat that the user uses. We don't do so far simply because we want to get the conversation right before we add any crazy stuff. Another thing important, especially for archives or national institutions who are important for on the national scale, to run the models locally. And many institutions, especially if they're government institutions, have the legal obligation to keep all data in the country of origin. So you can run ChatGPT locally in a country. So I could run ChatGPT offline on a server in Germany. So that is possible, and depending on requests, we will research that as well. Making it available mobile, I think that speaks for itself. Use borrowing history, we talked about that in the course of data protection. And include museums, archives, and institutions, especially museums. As I said in the beginning, I'm an art historian. I love museums as I love my bookshelf. And it's also only data, and to be able to chat in a museum about the items in the museum is my personal dream come true. So these are the different options that actually we work on different levels, and with one or two we only dream on them, but we would love to do it, and are happy if partners want to explore with us these options. In the end, and this is kind of my call to action and you have to do it. I think Moritz can confirm, unless you're working with it, you don't know what you want specifically, because you don't know what to expect. You don't really know the limitations of the technology, and you don't really understand the chances that this technology delivers. I think the only way you can do that if you start working with it. So there's nothing that learn. It's the classical use case for learning by doing. And I can promise you it's a fascinating world. It's a fun world, and all of us who are working on the end, it's actually something that is really fresh and new, and that gives pretty much everyone involved a motivation. Just a personal story to finish off this webinar. I spent time with a friend of mine. He has 3 kids. The middle one is 15. And I asked him, how to use AI. And he said, when I search for something, I go to Google to see what's out there. When I want to learn something, I go to YouTube to get a course. And when I want to solve a specific problem, I use ChatGPT. So what do we learn from that? It's already part of the life of a younger generation, just a tool that they use. And the best we can do is to basically provide them with a chance to use this tool properly with the offer that we have. So in the end, you need to decide what you want to do with it. Also part of the expectation management. Do you want to only do your smiles and help the users to learn about the library card? Do you want to recommend that books that you find as a library are great? Or do you want it to be a service like the search that knows everything that is inside the library? Or do you want it to be all of the above? There's a German word called eierlegende Wollmilchsau. Everyone who's not German can try to repeat this pronunciation. Horrible. The direct translation would be egg-producing wool milk pig. So basically, a service that does it all. And what you do. So whether you use it as a service, whether you use it as a recommendation system or know-it-all, or everything, that's basically up to you. You can talk with us about that. You can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, per email. You can actually, we set up the day before yesterday a forum on our website where you can also post comments and ask things and comment. So if you comment on the forum, or one of my team is going to answer it. And of course, there's a recording of the webinar and a follow-up email where we put everything on after this webinar. So thank you everybody for listening. I hope I kept you entertained. I hope you learned a lot. I hope I was able to transport a little bit of the vision and the fascination that we have for this topic. And again, get in touch, speak with us, have fun.